Hi, I'm Adam Kerwin. I'm the founder of the Kerwin Law Firm and have been practicing law for going on almost 17 years now. I've been focused during that time in asset protection and estate planning. Those are the only two things that I have focused on. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit today about why asset protection is important to begin with and why it has become increasingly more important in current times. I'd have to say that the fundamental reason that you should consider doing asset protection is that our legal system, which unfortunately is becoming less and less of a justice system, is just fraught with uncertainty. I'm going to give you some reasons, and I really hate when I see people using scare tactics, and that's certainly not something that I'm trying to do. But I do want you to be realistic about what it is to become involved in our legal system. One of the main reasons that it has become so uncertain is, I'd say there's three big reasons. The first of these reasons is that due to lobbying by special interest groups, a lot of laws are being passed that end up with the playing field being uneven. We saw this in with the fall of the real estate market and the proliferation of all the foreclosure cases. Rather than each case being looked at on a case-by-case basis, and rather than there being any kind of real compromise and to try and find a solution that would work for both the banks, the individuals, and try to keep our economy afloat, the legal system, at least here in Florida, ended up pulling a lot of judges out of retirement, putting them on the bench, and I was involved in many of these cases, and basically had them there to rule in favor of the banks. Little consideration was given to individual facts and circumstances. Now, and the people that had a lot of assets that were exposed were really not able to do anything, were not able to negotiate any kind of meaningful settlement with the bank. The bank, seeing the assets, took a very hard line. So one is that we do have this uneven playing field due to lobbying. The second main reason is that our legal system has become extremely expensive. If somebody sues you, if you do not get a lawyer, you're going to have to and try to fight it on your own. The system is complex. The likelihood of winning is small. If you choose not to fight the case at all, you'll lose, and the other side will get a judgment against you, which is a difficult thing to deal with. It hurts your credit, and they can take assets of yours if they're not properly protected. And if you do hire an attorney, you're forced to pull a very large sum of money out of your pocket to fight this case, and oftentimes you're not compensated for your attorney's fees even if you do win. So sometimes even if you win, you lose. And the third, I think one of the most disturbing elements of our legal system is that it really is not policed. You go up in front of a judge or a jury of your peers, and I want to start off by saying that I'm not saying that all juries are bad or all judges are bad, but they are human, and humans are subject to all sorts of biases, and humans oftentimes don't make good decisions. If you have the wrong group or somebody has a bias against you, you can end up losing, not because it's fair, it's not because the facts and circumstance dictate that you should lose, it's simply because this individual, for whatever reason, didn't like you, and you ended up on the short end of a judgment. Another thing that's interesting is that cases have become more and more complex. Medical malpractice. A lot of my clients are physicians. I've worked with physicians for a number of years. And it's very frustrating to a physician because if you have somebody suing a physician, say for example something that has allegedly gone wrong with an operation or a drug interaction, you take 12 people, even intelligent people, I include myself in this, and you put me on the stand to judge this individual based on a set of facts and circumstances that are significantly over my head. I do not have medical training, and how am I to decide what is right or wrong? Of course, the answer is they bring in experts. And so the plaintiff brings in his expert that says that the defendant the physician was incorrect and made mistakes, and of course the defense brings in their witness, and they will say just the opposite. So the jury then is forced to choose between two individuals that are giving opposite opinions, and still the only way that we can really judge who is giving us the right answer is our opinion, which one looks more honest. And sometimes the honest person doesn't present as well. And again, just the fact that there's complexity is a significant problem. The final one, which also I find very troublesome, is that nowadays it seems like people are less and less willing to take responsibility for their own actions. And people feel that if something goes wrong, well, that it's always somebody's fault. And honestly, that oftentimes just isn't the case. So, given all these things, and given the fact that, well, I'm sorry, there is the final one, which I think is the most disturbing, is that our legal system is really not policed by anyone. So, if I am going to sue somebody, and the law is on my side, and the facts are on my side, and I go and bring my lawsuit, if the judge, for whatever reason, right or wrong, rules in favor of the other party, then what is my option at that point in time? The only thing I can do is, of course, appeal. And that sounds all well and good, but the practical aspects of an appeal are troubling. First of all, you're not just retrying the case. You're not just able to resubmit your facts, and hopefully in this time in front of a judge that will be more reasonable. There's a much higher standard that has to be met. There are different standards. One of them is just showing that the judge exercised an abuse of discretion. So the standard of review is significantly higher. There's also the cost element. To bring an appeal, appeals can oftentimes go in excess of can cost you in excess of $100,000, and sometimes more. So they're extremely expensive to bring. And finally, even if you do win on appeal, first of all, you may or may not get awarded attorney's fees. So again, it may be very expensive and you're not compensated. Even if you are awarded attorney's fees, it doesn't mean that you can always collect those attorney fees from the other side. So you may end up with a piece of paper that entitles you to something that isn't, worth anything. And but most disturbingly is that there's no punishment for the judge that ruled inappropriately. So the judge doesn't get a salary cut. The judge doesn't get any kind of admonishment. It's just business as usual. So given that fact, there are some, and certainly not all, I don't want to paint with too wide a brush, but there are some judges that are very cavalier in the way that they hand out, the way they rule, and the way that they hand out their verdicts and judgments. So it's, for all those reasons, the legal system is uncertain. It's, in many cases, it can be a crapshoot, and you really have to ask yourself, do I trust our legal system to produce a just result enough of the time that I would feel comfortable relying on it as my sole protection from a frivolous lawsuit? And if understanding the system and seeing it, your answer is yes, then you really don't need asset protection. It's not something, it's a risk that you're willing to take. However, if you don't feel as comfortable about that, asset protection is just simply a way of leveling the playing field. If you protect your assets and therefore can show somebody at the onset of a lawsuit that even if they do prevail against you, the likelihood of collecting any money from you is slim to none, then you're not somebody who's likely going to be a target. Nobody is going to want to spend the money and the time to sue you, simply to end up with a piece of paper that they can't collect against. So I think the primary benefit of asset protection is allowing you to feel secure that all the assets that you've worked hard to amass over time will be protected, that a frivolous lawsuit will not end up with your having to retire in poverty, and that you take some of your power back. You get yourself significant negotiating leverage. And that's really why I feel that asset protection is an important endeavor for pretty much everybody to take. Think about a couple things. Even if you don't have a lot of assets to protect right now, you can certainly amass them over time. And another interesting thing is that we all, hopefully, we're all earning money. So are our wages exempt from garnishment? Can somebody come in and under the federal guideline, you can take up to 25% of somebody's take-home pay, a creditor can if they get a judgment against you. But in Florida, thankfully, there are some ways to protect your income from being garnished. So whether it's protecting your income or protecting assets that you have now or protecting assets that you have in the future, if you put a good asset protection plan in place, you can sleep well at night knowing that you and your family are going to be protected and that you're not going to lose everything if a frivolous lawsuit is brought or if the tide doesn't go your way once you're embroiled in some kind of litigation. My hope is that if you're properly asset protected and had a successful history of doing this, if you can demonstrate to the other side that you're simply not a good person to sue, oftentimes you can escape the expense and the headache of being involved in the system at all. And that's what I am wanting to do for you, and I'm hoping that you see the value in engaging in this type of planning. The other part of asset protection planning that you want to take into account is that asset protection planning should not be done in a vacuum. It needs to be done in coordination with your other planning. We're going to go, in upcoming videos, I'm going to be walking you through many of the ways to protect your assets. In broad categories, there's three main ways to protect assets. The first one is using state law exemptions. And here in Florida, we have a significant number of them. Your homestead, if it meets certain requirements, can be protected from the claims of creditors, and it's good to know whether or not your homestead is fully protected. Your retirement assets can be protected from creditors. Like I mentioned, your earnings can be protected from creditors. If you're married, some of your jointly owned assets can be protected from creditors. And there's a number of other exemptions that I can go through. I will be going through with you on tape to hopefully give you a better understanding of these. Excuse me, the second broad category of ways to protect assets are what I call using domestic entities. And domestic entities involve using limited liability companies, corporations, trusts, things of this nature, where you can hold your assets in different pots that will allow you to continue to use them, enjoy them, spend them, and have them be protected from the claims of a creditor in the event that you do find yourself subject to a judgment or liability or somebody trying to sue you. The third broad category is offshore. And I will say that offshore can be extremely protective, but there are a lot of downsides to offshore as well. For the right client, I've done offshore planning, and for the right client I think it can be a wonderful tool in your toolbox. But you also have to realize that whereas your assets may be offshore, you, the individual, will be onshore. And so you need to think about this as a whole and make sure that the tools that you're using are best suited for your facts and circumstances. And I think this is very important because as I go through each way of protecting your assets, whether it be through trusts or LLCs or using state law exemptions, there's always an upside and a downside. There is no magical box that you put your assets in and you're forever protected. You really need to understand how the particular device works, why it works, which is something that people oftentimes don't fully comprehend. And you need to understand the potential downsides that anything has. If you understand these, then asset protection can be wonderful. You can create something that works well for you and your facts and circumstances, and it can be a marvelous addition to your planning. The other thing that you need to consider is that your asset protection planning also needs to be integrated with the other types of planning. You have estate planning, especially if you're married or if you have children. You want to make sure that if you're not sued, but if something happens to you, that your assets will pass to your children in a manner that will best serve their needs. And I'll be talking a little bit more about that as well. Oftentimes you hear about the trust babies, where people get inordinately large amounts of money at, in my opinion, oftentimes too young an age before they're mature enough to handle it, which at best will result in the money being squandered, and at worst the money being used in a manner that can actually hurt the child. So I'll be talking about ways to create trusts and create ways of leaving assets to children that can avoid much of this. And let's face it, I have 3 kids myself, and they're our most valuable asset. And it's important to understand planning as a whole. You also have income tax planning. You also have financial advisors and people that help you with your investing your assets. Maybe you do that yourself. But whoever is helping you, we need to get these people together to come together as a team. Oftentimes, when I do planning, I'll meet with people's financial advisor and accountant, and if they have other advisors that they'd want me to consult with as well. And I think it's an excellent idea, because if we have each person giving their insight and supplying their expertise, the client at the end of the day ends up with a much better plan. And that's really what we're seeking to do, is to maximize the benefit on all fronts. Going back a little bit to the leaving assets to your children too, you can oftentimes leave assets to your children in a way that protect them from creditors' claims, including divorcing spouses. It's a shame to think about leaving assets to a child only for them to be taken by a creditor or a divorcing spouse. And there are ways that you can leave assets to children in a manner that they not only get the assets and the ability to control and enjoy them, they also get the ability to make sure that they're protected. You give it to them in a protected envelope. I believe it was Rockefeller once that said, own nothing, control everything. And that's really the ultimate goal here. So to wrap this up, I just want to, I wanted this to be a brief introduction to asset protection, what it is, why some of the reasons are that you may want to use it, because if you find yourself in a difficult situation, understand that all you're doing is leveling the playing field. By having less that people can take, the power is more in your hands, and you're taking it out of the hands of judges, juries, plaintiffs, and you're doing it in a way that's completely legal. It's completely authorized by our legal system, and it's something that I think wise people should take advantage of. If you ever decided that you, for moral reasons, wanted to give assets to the other side, asset protection does not prevent you from doing that. So it only provides you with the upside of giving you better negotiating leverage, and you still have the option of giving money to the other side if you feel that's appropriate. I think I'm going to end at this point, and hope you enjoyed this introduction. Like I said, we're going to be delving into a lot more details in upcoming video chats. And by all means, I'm putting together a new website which is going to give people an opportunity. I'm going to put a place for people to ask questions. I can't guarantee that I'm going to be able to get to every single question, but if you have questions, please give me a call, or if you feel that you'd like to have a meeting or consult with me on what is the best form of asset protection that you need, please feel free to give me a call. There is one more thing I wanted to say before I ended, and that is that asset protection is really best, is most effective if you do it in advance. So if before any trouble rears its ugly head and the skies are still blue, if you put an asset protection plan into place, it will pretty much be a Fort Knox, and it'll be very, very difficult for anybody to pierce it. But that being said, I know that we are going through tough economic times, and there's lots of people that are facing liabilities already. And believe it or not, despite what you might have heard from other people, there are still things that you can do to protect assets even after the bad thing has happened. Now, I certainly wouldn't advise using that as an excuse to wait and putting things off, because it's really best to, like I said, your strongest asset protection will be, and oftentimes your cheapest asset protection is going to be to do it in advance of any trouble popping up. But if you have everything in place, if you don't have everything in place and you find yourself on the wrong end of a lawsuit, or you think one might be coming down the pike, please don't give up, don't throw in the towel. Give me a call and I'd be happy to walk through with you what some of your options are, and that's probably I'll be going over some of them in the upcoming videos. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your taking the time to watch this, and have a great night. Bye-bye.